This episode of RealAg Radio is brought to you by high-performing new Carbine insecticide from FMC. Carbine insecticide delivers fast, selective, and extended control of aphids in alfalfa and pulses, leaving beneficials like lady beetles to help in the fight. Ask your retailer today.
It's time for RealAg Radio on Rural Radio Channel 147 on Sirius XM. RealAg Radio and RealAgriculture.com is your home for insight and analysis of the issues that are impacting your farm business. Let's get real and get connected with RealAg Radio. Welcome to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM. Shaun Haney, your host here on this Friday edition of the show. Hope you're having yourself a great day. Thanks so much for making RealAg Radio and Rural Radio 147 a part of your workday. And of course, a big shout out to everybody also listening out there on the RealAg Radio podcast in Canada, the US, or beyond. It is great to have you a part of the Real Agriculture community. Today on the show, we've got a beef market update with Wasko. Record beef prices. Yes, but what about profitability? We'll ask Ann about that and a whole lot more. Yeah, strong prices in those cattle markets. We'll also be joined here today by Kelvin Heppner and Lyndsey Smith of RealAgriculture. We're going to dive into this potential federal worker strike and what that could mean for some of the services provided to agriculture. Yeah, this is a big one, kind of undercovered, and we're going to try to unpack it here a little bit today. We've also got some new results of the Canadian Farmer Sentiment Index we're going to discuss with the panel. You heard from Justin Funk of Real Agri Studies earlier this week on the show. We'll also talk a little bit about the weather, of course, that and a whole lot more. If you have any feedback on today's show, we'd love to hear from you. Send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. Of course, you can also find us across all the different social media platforms, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And for those of you on TikTok, we are there as well. Or you can call the RealAg feedback line. That number is 855-776-6147. Let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to get the beef market update with Ann Wasko of Gateway Livestock Exchange right after this.
Maximize your yield potential by improving your nutrient use efficiency with WolfTrack's DDP micronutrients from Koch Agronomic Services. WolfTrack's micronutrients allow crops to consistently access the nutrients they need when they need them. And with even coat technology, WolfTrack's products thoroughly coat each and every granule, giving you an even distribution and placing micronutrients in close proximity to growing roots. Better nutrition, better crops, better farming. Get started today at wolftraxmicros.ca. That's wolftraxmicros.ca.
How's your seed quality? What should you treat with? What about herbicide carryover and environmental concerns? Spring is here, and you've got a lot of things to think about in regards to your pulse crop. The Pulse School on Real Agriculture has information and advice for all these questions and more to help you navigate this season. Brought to you by BASF. Pulse School episodes are available at pulseschool.com, realagriculture.com, or as a podcast on your favorite streaming service. Download the latest episode today.
Looking for robust, reliable grain storage solutions? AGI leads the industry in quality, innovation, and offerings to protect your investment. Designed for exceptional cleanout, superior strength, and unbeatable versatility, you can rest easy knowing your grain is secure in an AGI West Steel bin. With 100 years of manufacturing experience, AGI West Steel bins will exceed your expectations for reliable storage. AGI West Steel, long-term safe storage. Find AGI at your local dealer.
And welcome back to RealAg Radio here on this Friday. This segment is sponsored by Koch Agronomic Services, makers of WolfTrack's DDP micronutrients, designed to boost crop performance while maximizing fertilizer investments. Learn more about WolfTrack's and other nutrient management, nutrient protection, and seed enhancement solutions at kochagronomicservices.ca. That's WolfTrack's DDP micronutrients. And joining us for the beef market update is Ann Wasko of the Gateway Livestock Exchange. Ann, how are you doing on this fantastic Friday?
Well, I am good, and it's good to be here. Thanks, Shaun.
Yeah, okay, and what's also good? Beef prices. What is going on in this cattle market?
Well, we knew we were going to be short on supplies this year, but it's all happening very quickly. Again, strong demand, all these pieces coming together. But, let's start south of the border. First of all, U.S. fed cattle this week, another $5 higher. So in the south, Texas and Kansas, 175 north. Nebraska region, 180 to 182 live, 290 delivered. That's $11 to $12 higher draft. So an explosive market. And when you just kind of stand back and look at it, Shaun, we're $10 US higher in 2 weeks and over $20 a hundred since the start of this year. So this market has, I think it's more than saying grind higher. This market has exploded higher.
Why?
Well, again, the supply piece is strong, but here's the other. It's not, it takes more than one to tango. The other side of it has been the demand side. So choice beef prices last night over $3 a hundred. The last time, so that's $11 higher than last week, just to put that in perspective. And we haven't been over $3 on the choice cutout since the fall of 21. And that's when we still had COVID issues that were really impacting supply and supply chains and all of those. It was a crazy wholesale market in 21. But so this one is just plain solid because of tighter supplies around the board. So the supply and demand, those are great pieces to be driving this market higher. The carcass weights being down, we've talked a lot about that the last few weeks. That means less production again. So it's almost like a plus. And I think, just to bring it around to the Canadian market, Shaun, in Western Canada this week, our dress prices were $370 delivered. That's $5 to $7 higher than last week. When Canfax comes out with the live equivalent later today, it should be on top of $220 when all is said and done. So, and our carcass weights last week, Shaun, our steer weights 912, 44 pounds lighter than last year. So it's like when things snowball, they're snowballing to the better, whereas last year it felt like they were all snowballing to the worse.
Yeah. Okay. So having said all that, strong on the price end, we know that feed costs have shown weakness. Okay. Profitability. Fill us in there.
I think that's still a storyline for second half 2023, to be real honest with you, Shaun. So even though, we're looking at the futures markets for new crop prices later in 2023 and the moisture conditions we're talking about and looking at when we look out our windows, I mean, all of those things are pointing to better conditions for the 23 crop. However, what's still going in the mouths of cattle today is still old crop, and that's still pricey. So we're still some time away from truly getting hopefully a good break on feed costs, but I think that's a story for the second half of the year. So as a result, profitability is still going to be not as shiny as it should be, even with these record prices. But they're in the black for most cases today now.
Yeah, if you missed my discussion earlier this week on RealAg Radio with Chip Flory, host of Agri-Talk, encourage everybody to go back and listen to that. We talked a lot about the corn market and the projection of the 92 million acres. For a lot of people that are, livestock producers, you really better hope that planted acre number gets as close to that 92 million acres as you possibly can, because, something in the eights will definitely sort of probably disrupt the direction we've been going here with some of these commodity prices for sure. Now, trade data, you've got some information there.
Yeah, StatsCan came out with February trade data last week, so this will be cumulative, what I'm going to report to you. So for January and February, first 2 months of this year, Canadian beef exports are up 15% in volume and up 10% in value from last year. So that's an interesting figure. I think as we work through 2023, we will see beef exports likely lag last year, but just because we're going to have less production, but we're certainly off to a strong pace. Our key markets, and this is in order of size, Shaun, so far this year, the U.S., we're up 10% into the U.S., we're up 27% into Japan, up 41% into Mexico, and up 82% into South Korea. So those are our key main markets where most beef has gone so far this year.
Wow.
On the other side, just to balance exports, imports, our beef imports coming into Canada for Q1 down 14%. So when you put the three pieces together, our domestic beef tonnage production is down 1% so far this year. Exports are up 15%. Imports are down 14%. So all of that's leading to a net smaller beef supply. And really a similar story holds true south of the border. So that's really the supply piece to this whole side of talking about higher cattle prices in 23.
So if we get some moisture from a grassland perspective to improve grass quality and a amount, there's real signals here, isn't there, for retention?
There is. I think we have to be cautious, though, Shaun.
Okay.
I mean, we had a lot of those similar discussion points in 2014-15.
Okay.
And it didn't really materialize. So again, I think producers really need to see more than a one-year wonder, to be honest with you. And again, from a demographic perspective, there could be other, discussions around exiting the industry, and this is quite honestly when one should, if that's part of your plan.
Yep.
So I think you're right. Those are often the key drivers: profitability and moisture in terms of growth of the North American cattle herd. But it's been such a tough go. I really think, again, looking back at 14-15 when it really didn't happen, even with great prices, we're going to need to see some length in the tooth for this one. Yeah,
that makes sense. Sustain. People want to see the trend sustain itself.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
That makes a lot of. I think I just want that cow herd to expand so desperately, and I'm like one of those people that's just looking for any signal that we can say yes.
Well, yeah, it's right. Profitability really needs, more than one check in the bank, I guess, is this check's going to need to go to a lot of other things before you start to look at growth. But yeah, these are certainly steps in the right direction, Shaun, in terms of supporting that. But this one may take a little longer to turn the tide, if you will. Yeah,
we got to wrap up here, but I'll ask you this question: what exactly are grass cattle going to cost here this year?
Look at what's going out. The prices that are starting on these light grass cattle have just been explosive here, and it's still early spring. And still looking out my window, I still have white on the ground. So but it looks like it's going to be explosive. Having said that, based on the futures for later this year, cattle coming off grass, you can honestly pencil a profit.
Oh wow! Okay,
so have a look at that one. Yes.
Well, that just means that market's got to go higher. Because why would we buy something with profit in mind? We always want to do it on the gain, right? So that's interesting.
Yeah, no, good point.
Okay, and have yourself a great weekend as we still deal with a little bit of some winter in the middle of April, which is I don't know sure what's going on, but it'll be summer before we know it. So enjoy your weekend, okay?
Okay, thanks, Shaun. You too.
We'll be right back on RealAg Radio with the RealAg Issues Panel. Lyndsey Smith, Kelvin Heppner standing by to break down all the top issues of the week. You're listening to RealAg Radio, Rural Radio 147.
How's your farm's financial performance? Know where you stand and take your operation to the next level with FCC Benchmarker. Compare your farm performance against similar-sized operations in your area with FCC Benchmarker, a new tool from Farm Credit Canada. It helps identify your strengths and areas for improvement and empowers you to make strategic business decisions. Ready to start? Contact your local Farm Credit Canada office for details.
As you head out into the field this season, the Corn School's got you covered. Everything from tillage discussions, weed control info, field trial results, yield strategies, and more. The Corn School on RealAgriculture.com has the information and advice you need to help you succeed. Brought to you by Pride Seeds and BASF. Corn School episodes are available at cornschool.com, from RealAgriculture.com, or as a podcast from your favorite streaming service. Download the latest episode today.
If you're thinking about growing oats in 2023, how about trying CDC Endure from Alliance Seed? CDC Endure Oats is consistently one of the top yielding varieties in the Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Alberta provincial yield trials. With strong standability, excellent disease resistance, and excellent end-use quality, CDC Endure might be the variety for you and your farm. Available from authorized Alliance Seed retailers, Parrish and Heimbecker, Patterson Grain, and Northwest Terminal. For more information, visit allianceseed.com.
And welcome back to RealAg Radio for the RealAg Issues Panel. This segment's brought to you by Granubor. It's from US Borax. Ask for it by name. Go to borax.com. Okay, let's jump into the issues with the panel. First up, it is Lyndsey Smith coming out of Ottawa, Ontario. Lyndsey, welcome back to the show.
Why, thank you. It is beautiful here. Summer has arrived for at least 3 days. It's pretty great.
Those first days where you finally feel like winter has broke. Aren't they great?
It's pretty amazing. But I will say yesterday, walked around, took a look at, of course, our creek is super high right now. And it's very odd to be walking around when it's 28 degrees and there's still snow. That was very strange, I have to say. The dogs were rolling in it. It was, it's a bit odd to be this hot so quickly, but I will take it. We definitely have had a very quick melt. Everything's greening up. It's pretty wild.
Awesome. Also joining us is Kelvin Heppner coming out of Altona, Manitoba. Hey, Kelvin, how are you doing today?
Doing well here too, Shaun. And same here. We've taken a major leap this week towards spring. As last week when we were talking last Friday, going into the Easter weekend, we were just coming out of a major blizzard, and I think probably over 2/3, maybe 3/4 of our snow has disappeared this week as temperatures have risen, and it's actually been raining off and on today. So the snow is disappearing, and the water is accumulating now.
One of the things that Scott Kaler from WeatherLogic said earlier this week on the show, and you can go back and listen to that interview if you're looking for the Western Canadian and Eastern Canadian forecast that he provided for 2023 growing season, or at least the spring portion here in the early months. Kelvin, he kind of said we're going to have sort of the same growing conditions in Western Canada we had in 22. So he thinks a bit of a repeat performance. That would be good for Manitoba. I guess, because yields were quite good last year.
Yields were good, but we may have gotten away with a much later fall than what we do some other years. So, late seeding was certainly the story last year, but we benefited from not having frost for much of, I don't know if we had frost in September at all. So that allowed crops to finish. So that's the thing. If we have a late spring, we need that late fall again. And I do think in terms of the snow in the field and on our yard here in Manitoba, I think we've moved ahead of last year at this time. Last year's melt took forever. There was ice and slush and mud everywhere for, it felt like probably 2 months. And it seems like we've advanced quite quickly, and who knows, it could change with whatever Mother Nature, the weather patterns bring us here. But at this point, I think it feels like we've moved from a real late spring seeding or maybe something that's not even too far off of average, just based off of how quickly things have turned this week.
Well, in typical Southern Alberta fashion, Lyndsey, our local golf course that I golf at, it opened last weekend.
Well, of course it did. Because that is just how things happen in the Lethbridge area. Yeah. But I'm guessing that there will be people who, if they try to play this weekend, will have to wear parkas. So whatever.
Just how it goes. Just how it goes.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, Bank of Canada holds rates at 4.5%. I guess we've seen a bit of a drop in that inflation number. It's amazing how excited we get about 5%. All of a sudden, it's like we are all the way down to 5%. And yet the goal for the Bank of Canada is to be around that 2 to 3%. So, Kelvin, I guess the decision was expected. I guess it continues to be, where do we go from here?
Yeah, and right now it does appear that the Bank of Canada believes this soft landing is still possible. They're talking about hitting that 3% inflation rate by the middle of this year. So in just a couple of months, we're already halfway through April here. So they're expecting it to decline more gradually. In overall CPI inflation to 2% by the end of 2024 is their timeline right now. GDP is maybe a bit of a weaker story, or they're projecting weaker GDP throughout this year before strengthening next year. The Canadian economy is only expected to grow by 1.4% this year and 1.3% next year. So that would be on the lower end of what's happening in some of our neighboring countries. So it's a situation where in some ways Bank of Canada maybe didn't have much of a choice. They kind of have to follow what's happening in the US on this, and it's looking like there's basically holding steady right now, waiting to see the effects of higher interest rates as households and businesses have to renew mortgages and renew loans and all those types of things. Those effects have all yet to play out here.
Yeah, and Lyndsey, when we look at the Canadian Farmer Sentiment Index, the results for March, and if you want to find out more about that index, you can go to RealAgRstudies.com. But Lyndsey, one of the things we ask farmers about is their confidence in making farm investments. And what's interesting, if you go back to September all the way through to March, the number really hasn't moved. And it was 59 in September, and now it's 52 at a 200, so quite negative. It was one of the lowest readings we had in March. Farmers a little bit uneasy about making capital investments at this time.
Which, I mean, probably makes sense. We have to think about it in light of maybe some of the other opinions farmers have about, future financial positions, and those are maybe a bit more positive, though still on the negative side. But realistically, if your investment might need to be funded through a new loan, it's not a great time. So I guess, we could maybe dig into that a bit further and say, if you didn't have to borrow, what do you think? But if you do, it's incredible. Money is not cheap right now. Yeah. And so if that is part of your expansion plan, like Kelvin just mentioned, we could be looking at, a much better or much different picture for lending by this time next year or well into next fall. And maybe it is worth that extra growing season of waiting before you do that.
If I was renewing and going for a fixed rate, I go as short as I could.
Yeah.
I think. What do you think, Kelvin? This is where we have a disclaimer.
Yeah.
The opinions of the
everyone
host
make their own decisions.
The opinion of the host and the panelists is by no means the opinions of Rural Radio 147 or Real Agriculture.
Yeah. Do not invest in markets based on what we say.
Yeah, please.
But, so just on our farm, we did just renew something on April 1st, and we went as short as we could. So I agree with you on, but I'm not sure if that's there's just so many different variables, and it depends which economist you listen to, how they're interpreting what's unfolding, because some people are saying it's just a short, there's still the economists who are saying this is just a short blip and interest rates are going to return to what we were used to in just a year or two. It won't be a long time, but others are saying, hang on, we're in for a long period, many years of higher interest rate. So it's a tough call.
Well, and
I can sympathize with all the farmers in the sentiment survey who feel the same way.
Oh, absolutely. And future farmers are feeling optimistic about their current farm financial performance. Okay, that's positive. What's negative is future farm financial performance. So they're unsure about the future. Now it's at 87 out of 200. It's just it's just below that 100, that neutral line of 100. What's interesting is how far the market sentiment on the market and an outlook for commodity prices, how that has changed from September to March. We've gone from a 128, which is I at the time my thought was a little bit lofty. Okay, and what's happened is we've kind of swung the pendulum, cut it almost at half to 74. I don't know. We had Chip Flory on the show earlier this week, and I think maybe we're thinking too negatively about the direction of the market.
But I also wonder, and this is what's fascinating about the Farmer Sentiment Index and doing it over time. Is there a time of year component? And we only launched this in September, right? So we're going to eventually have year over year data to look at. And so I do wonder, if you're answering the survey when you're in the combine and you've got cab corn and everything's rosy, maybe you've got a bit of a different, because that 128 is pretty lofty. Like, that's pretty positive. So now we're ahead of a growing season, for areas that didn't get moisture. Like, there's all that uncertainty because really we start again, right?
Yeah,
so,
but this is typically,
so there might be an annual.
Yeah, so we are going to benchmark that. So we will have a benchmark for the seasonality. I know that Justin Funk is going to be doing that. But we're in spring. This is when we start to talk about weather markets and, will we get it all planted? Will it all get in the ground? This could be a good, May can be a very good time to deliver grain historically.
I think Lyndsey makes a good point, though, about the seasonality of grain markets. February, March is often the doldrums, right? So it's
fascinating.
Yeah. Often we see a rally going into May, like you're saying, Shaun, into the weather market through June, and finally realize, okay, we have a crop here, or things are really struggling, and I'm curious whether it correlates, and also I'm curious whether farmer sentiment, like you said, whether there's a pendulum effect here, where as they say in grain markets, when something's on the front page of mainstream magazines, that's usually, you're probably past the point of selling then at that point. That's probably the high is in at that point. I wonder if it's the same when it comes to farmer sentiment, and that there's a pendulum effect here where we maybe overshoot on both sides in terms of sentiment.
Good points. Hey, let's take a break. We've got more to discuss, including a potential strike with federal government employees that could impact you on the farm and some of the government programming and services to be delivered. We'll find out about that when we come back. You're listening to RealAg Radio, Rural Radio 147.
MNP's farm management consulting team is proud to help farmers and livestock producers remain competitive and profitable. Our team is made up of professional agrologists and consultants who come from extensive agriculture backgrounds themselves and offer a high level of technical expertise, first-hand knowledge, and close relationships within the agriculture industry. Whether you're looking for help with your day-to-day challenges or require specific advice, our customizable service offering means you can call on us for whatever advice you need. Visit us at mnp.ca to learn more.
Whether you're seeding, harvesting, or anything in between, the Wheat School on RealAgriculture.com has you covered. Timely agronomic information from industry experts available online anytime. Give your wheat crop a good start and a great finish with the Wheat School on RealAgriculture.com. Brought to you by C&M Seeds, Syngenta Canada, and the Alberta Wheat and Barley Commission.
And welcome back to RealAg Radio. Shaun Haney, Lyndsey Smith, Kelvin Heppner. Lyndsey, how much do you worry about zinc?
So much. All the time.
You should. It's good. I'm glad to hear you are. You can grow more, risk less, realize greater yield potential, and address zinc deficiency while improving soil health. Soleos Zinc delivers ROI you can count on and is backed with a product guarantee. I like that product guarantee. Try it today. Learn more at soleos.com. That's SOILEOS.com. Okay, let's get into the issues. Kelvin, we got a federal workers or a potential federal workers strike that could really impact some components of agriculture. What have you learned?
Well, we're still piecing together, trying to understand the picture here, what the actual risk is of this labor disruption happening. As if it would go ahead, this would maybe be the largest strike in Canadian history.
Whoa! Seriously?
One of the largest strikes in Canadian. Well, and that it all depends how it would unfold too. Whether they would implement, whether everybody would go on the picket line at the same time, or whether they'd have rolling picket lines and strike action, that type of thing. So, and I think that would be the more likely scenario. Is certainly this would impact many Canadians, and so it would upset a lot of people. But there's over 155,000 federal employees are officially in a legal strike position as of today. They're members of the Public Service Alliance of Canada, so several different chapters or locals under the PSAC union have voted in favor of a strike mandate over the last few weeks. And in terms of agriculture programs, this would affect delivery of many programs and services, Agri-Invest, Agri-Stability, the new programs under the new Sustainable Canadian Agricultural Partnership, the administration of those. And then you get to the Canadian Dairy Commission, the Canadian Grain Commission. They both employ PSAC members of this union that are also in a strike position. approximately, according to a source I spoke to this morning, 65% of the employees at the Canadian Grain Commission are in a strike position today. So that would affect everything from export inspection at the Port of Vancouver to the tracking of grain export statistics, producer payment security, all those types of programs. Those staff are currently in a strike position at the Grain Commission, and so we're trying to wrap our heads around how serious a threat this actually is, and what the likelihood of this union, the Public Service Alliance of Canada, again, many employees under the Canada Revenue Agency and the Treasury Board. So it's tax season right now, personal income tax season. And so that will affect Canadians across the board if they would take action. So, and from what I can tell, they have a 60-day window now to strike after a vote under the legislation that applies to this union. So, or these collective bargaining agreements. So
think about agronomic research at a research station. That won't happen.
That too, yeah. And so there are also essential roles in terms of Ag Canada researchers that look after livestock or animals or things like that. Payroll, I believe, is deemed essential. And those would continue, but a lot of these programs and services under Ag Canada and these also the adjacent commissions would be affected from what we can tell. But yeah, it's right now we're still in the investigative stage of trying to understand how likely this is to actually happen. As I said, this level of strike probably hasn't happened in Canada before.
Lyndsey, in the U.S., there's all these, they always have these issues of government shutdown, right? This is a different kind of government shutdown.
Well, but it's sort of similar, and Kelvin has done a great job sort of trying to summarize just how large it could be. It's not just large in the number of people potentially that could be striking, but across departments, and within those departments, just how many things would not be happening if they in fact strike. I think what I'm sort of surprised by is that they are already in a strike position, and we've hardly heard much about it leading up to this. Now, I live in Ottawa city limits. On my, radio stations here, there have been advertisements for quite some time, largely from the CRA. But, Ottawa's a government town. There's tons of people that are part of this bargaining that potentially are in a strike position. So perhaps I've heard about it way more than other people, but really, they're already in a strike position before we've really been talking about this larger scale. So that does make me wonder, is that, that no one thinks it's really going to happen, or is it that the federal government doesn't want a lot of attention on this? I don't know. Would love to know if anyone's got an opinion on that, but certainly it's pretty serious. And as Kelvin mentioned, yes, some essential jobs will continue. But for things like on this list are things, like the SCAP program or the Youth Employment Skills program. So there are definitely things that could, and CRA, there are things that could be sending money out to farmers that wouldn't be happening. So that is one thing to consider, is that it's not just paperwork that wouldn't happen. It's that potentially the movement of money wouldn't happen either, if you're entitled to either some sort of grant or something like that. So it's definitely could be. And then there's the operational side with the Grain Commission and that sort of stuff. So it's pretty serious. Yeah.
What about the politics of it? What will we hear from the Prime Minister? Because, they'll want to have the sympathetic union vote. So they always tend to move quite slowly on these kinds of issues. Having said that, what are we going to hear from the Conservatives? What will their position be on this sort of strike action? Do you have any predictions there, panel?
Well, it does tie in with our earlier discussion about inflation, and that's a big reason why these unions are fighting so hard here, because of inflation and increased cost of living and wanting to see wage increases. And at the same time, central banks are not wanting to see wage increases, because that could further fuel. It won't help pull back on demand, as central banks are wanting to see. So, yeah, I'm curious. I think no politician is going to want to sound not sympathetic to these. Politicians are all going to want, let's flip that around. Politicians are going to want to sound sympathetic to these workers who are seeking higher wages. But yeah, when it comes down to fiscal constraints from the government side of things, and some of what they're asking for in terms of raises, it will be interesting to watch. I do expect Conservatives will have more of a fiscal constraint type message, but they're also going to want to sound sympathetic, as we've seen Conservative movement in general across Canada with Doug Ford and Pierre Poilievre also trying to court that union vote, get those NDP voters into the Conservative camp.
If I was the Conservatives, what I would do is I would use this opportunity to talk about how the Liberals have fettered, spent money so foolishly in a whole bunch of needless ways and pointless ways. And, here's some money for you. Here's some money for you. And what about this program that we overspent on? And, $50 million for the Arrive Can app. And it basically took away the opportunity to actually support federal workers. Like you could kind of tie the two things sort of together instead of just coming out and saying, because Poilievre wants to be, he's very much a fiscal conservative. And so this is a bit of a difficult path for him to navigate. But I would talk about the over government spending in relation to this as a tactic. But you
might be getting a text message from a Ottawa-based cell number. I'm not sure. It might be coming from Poilievre's office right now, Shaun. I think
right now. Yeah.
You think I'm correct or incorrect?
I think that is probably the strategy that they will take. Yeah, that sounds like something that
you heard it here first. You heard it here first. The invoices in the mail. Hey, we got a new column up at RealAgriculture.com written by our partner in Real Agri Studies, Justin Funk, talking about where have all the salespeople gone. This is talking about some data from our December survey on farmers' interactions with salespeople. And Lyndsey, really good post that Justin wrote kind of summarizing some of the findings, but farmers want face-to-face contact.
So, and what's fascinating about that is that salespeople in general aren't necessarily doing that. So not to overgeneralize, of course, but we did ask farmers how many salespeople in a month would be coming to talk to them, those sorts of things. And that number is significantly down over the last 10 years. So far fewer salespeople are showing up at farms. Sales have changed dramatically, but also, we know that COVID changed how much face-to-face interaction was even allowed for a while, but it seems like we maybe have gone into some routines of more emails, more text, more online stuff because of that, but farmers don't like it. When it comes to selling product, they want to be face-to-face. And I completely understand why, especially on some of these are really big decisions and really important decisions, and you need to know the support's there. So then the question is, from a sales perspective, is the sales team relying too much on text and email or phone calls, which phone calls weren't super low, but text and email was definitely not everyone's favorite.
Well, and for sure. Yeah, and what farmers said is, I don't like Zoom sales calls.
Oh yes, that was no,
barely registered. Barely registered. Yeah, and there is a bit of a generation. I'm curious. It would be fun to do a study looking at the salesperson's perspective on this. Mm-hmm. Like I think of, I have a 21-year-old, or he'll be 21 this year. And like they just view to him a WhatsApp conversation is having a conversation. So I could see for like young salespeople, this being a real challenge, trying to understand why is there such value in this face-to-face. And what's interesting is, before you jump to the conclusion that this is a bunch of old farmers that want face-to-face and these young farmers, they like all these new digital techniques. Not true. Not so. Young farmers viewed face-to-face contact as just as important. Now, Kelvin, for you, salesperson comes to your farm. I'm assuming that you're okay with face-to-face provided they book an appointment. It's the salesperson that just, hey, I happen to be in the area, thought I'd stop by. That's annoying.
It can be annoying if you're in the middle of something, if you don't have time to chat. I know that does happen occasionally, but usually salespeople are very conscious of farmers' time, is what I find, and usually they're just dropping something off, or just hey, just wanted to check in how things are going, and it's usually just a very quick conversation if they haven't made an appointment. I do wonder, though, from the company's perspective, what sales data shows in terms of the ROI, the return on the cost of paying salespeople versus having online or other means of connecting with farmers, because it feels like there are just fewer salespeople maybe employed out there, like the territories, the regions have gotten bigger and those types of things. I do wonder how it's viewed, how what the perspective on this would be from the kind of the decision maker within the employer side of things.
Very costly. It's hard to find really good ag salespeople. So very costly. And I think companies look at some of these digital methods and techniques as efficient ways for salespeople to operate, no doubt. But isn't the customer always right? But
if sales haven't dropped off, then and you've gone away from fewer salespeople, then that's and some of this is all skewed still by the pandemic time frame, and we're still coming out of that, and companies are still adjusting and restaffing and all those types of things. People are still getting used to going to work for these days. So what
would your sales be if you actually engaged in the sales technique that farmers are clearly asking for? Sure, your sales wouldn't have dropped, but what would they have been? And we've got some companies that have heavily invested in direct-to-farmer sales. Heavily invested, especially on the crop protection side. And so this is all really, really interesting to see how all this falls out. So if you want more information on that, go to realagristudies.com or send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. Let's take a break. We've got more coming up here on RealAg Radio right after this.
Warehouse, what can we do for you?
Yeah, I'm looking for some nitrogen.
All right, we're running low and it's awful pricey, but let me check. Hold.
The answer to low supply and high prices for nitrogen is Envita, a microbe with systemic nitrogen fixation. Envita works throughout the foliage and roots, providing a right place, right time source of nitrogen to maximize yield in corn, wheat, and soybeans.
Yeah, we're all out, but...
You know what? I'll take some of that Envita.
That's what I was going to recommend.
Book your Envita while supplies last.
Canola is more than just a pretty face in the prairie landscape. It's a big business, both here and around the world, that requires you to be informed and up to date on everything it takes to grow a successful crop. The Canola School on RealAgriculture.com has an expert library of video resources covering markets, agronomy, and more to help you grow a healthy and profitable canola crop. Visit canolaschool.com today. Brought to you by BASF Canada and Invigor Hybrid Canola.
And welcome back to RealAg Radio for the RealAg Issues Panel. This segment is sponsored by Koch Agronomic Services, creators of Anvil Nitrogen Stabilizer. Defend against volatilization, boost efficiency, accomplish more. Learn more about Anvil and other nutrient management, nutrient protection, and seed enhancement solutions at kochagronomicservices.ca. Okay, let's finish up. We may have a bonus segment today for the RealAg Radio podcast listeners, so stay tuned for that after the show. Okay, now this is one that I totally missed on, and there's I guess word, Kelvin, that potentially there's going to be a requirement in the clean fuel regulation for people to provide the GPS coordinates of their field. What is the deal here?
Yeah, so this is an issue that's seen some reporting this week. It has to do with the clean fuel regulations that the federal government has put forward, and we've certainly covered and discussed the excitement that there is in terms of new canola and soybean, potentially other crop demand going into trying to meet these clean fuel mandates that governments in Canada and across the U.S. are implementing. So this could be a bit of a hiccup, though, as the regulations, as they're written, require that producers would have to disclose the GPS coordinates to the 5th decimal point of where the crop has been harvested. And so when you think of the requirement, when you're selling grain, delivering it to an elevator, you don't know what the grain company doesn't even know what it's going to be using that crop for. So if it's going to be used for fuel, for biofuels, it's now going to potentially be required to have these GPS coordinates attached to it. Never mind the segregation at the farm level. How do you know which field that bin had grain coming from 4 different fields, or which field did it come from? There's just so many different segregation issues around this that it sounds like there's been some pushback from some agriculture and fuel industry groups that are working trying to work with the Environment and Climate Change Minister Stephen Guilbeault on addressing this issue, but it sure seems like the regulations weren't written with crop production in mind as a feedstock here.
Yeah, I'm not even going to get excited because this is so ridiculous. It's going to change. I'm not even going to get on a rant. But Lyndsey, why do we keep on doing this to ourselves? Can somebody proofread this stuff before it goes out? Because this is like self-inflicted wounds again. They keep on doing it to themselves.
And to what end? So this is where, like, I understand where it's like, okay, well, we need some sort of level of, assurance of what it is we're buying, if it's for a particular thing or what, like, but at some point it's like, you've got to filter it through the real life filter. Like, is there one of those where we have to think about, why are we asking for a particular data point and what does it really matter? And sometimes maybe that's really important, but other times it's like, okay, what is that going to take to get it there? And what is the value of it? And if the value is, astronomical, then you do what it takes. But what is the actual value down to, like, really, you need to know what field it comes from? Somebody, I don't know, had a great idea. Clearly.
Well, because you want to make sure that nobody cut down a tree line or make sure they
grown in a national park. That's what's specifically cited here.
But it wasn't grown in a national park.
Yeah, I could say.
Okay, so again, I'm sorry, is there a lot of farming happening in national parks that we don't know about? Again, the reality filter. I feel like there needs to be one before any of this gets anywhere, because I don't understand why we're doing this to ourselves.
I have no answers.
Someone help me.
It's the same question I asked. I don't know. Maybe Kelvin knows.
Someone help me.
I don't either. I have all the same questions.
Okay.
Yeah. All right.
Don't get it. That is going to get changed, right? I hope I'm not being too optimistic there, but okay. Let's move on. FCC put out a land rental report and compared the 22 dated 21 and 20. Some really interesting points in here, how they break it down in terms of looking at the range of rent to the price of the land and coming up with a ratio. So in Alberta, land rent is 2.6% of the price. PEI 4.35, that was the highest. What was Ontario? 1.4. Manitoba 2.4. Saskatchewan 3.1. So Saskatchewan, the highest of all those prairie provinces. Kelvin, what do we make of this?
To me, it's just interesting that there's such a discrepancy between provinces in terms of how rental rates have kept up or not kept up with the increasing land prices. What are the factors? Something that I'd be interested in digging more into, what's driving that. Is that demand from livestock production, supply managed sectors in terms of needing to spread manure, and so they're buying land, differences in cash on hand and whether people are buying land versus renting. It's interesting that it varies so much province to province across the country. And
Lyndsey, another way to look at the data is farmland rental rates as a proportion of average cropland revenue. Okay. Mm-hmm. So what we found here is in 2022, Alberta was 18.7, Saskatchewan only 14. So remember, Saskatchewan was the average rent per price of land, but when you look at it on a rent to revenue standpoint, there's the order changes. Manitoba was 14.7. In a corn soybean rotation, Ontario was 22.6 and Quebec 15.9. Interesting data points there too.
So it is, but I'm not a super numbers person. And so to me, I'm like, okay, so what should the number be, I guess, right? So, and I know the way this is done, there isn't sort of a line of like, this is good, this is bad, but that's sort of what I want from this is like, I want I want someone to talk me through like, we should try to get it within this range. So if either of you have done that thinking and could explain it to me, that'd be great, because we have this conversation a lot, right? This is of course just land rent, and in relation to, the value of the land and those sorts of things. But we often, when we're talking about land prices, we often talk about what is the productive value of that land and are we way out of whack with that? So this sort of takes it that one step further of looking at the rent of it. But I still don't know, like, is 22% out of Ontario, like, is that good? I don't know. Is it enough? I don't know. I'd love people to sit down and tell me whether or not it's worth it. But if rent prices keep going and people keep paying them, I guess it's still worth it. I don't know.
Yeah. It's we've seen. I think a lot of people would say, "Hey, we've seen a big increase in land rents in your area." Kelvin, you've seen that in your area?
Oh, certainly, and interest rates are factoring into this as well in terms of return on that investment. Landowners now, you've got your money tied up in owning land. You could be seeing a higher return elsewhere in that same money. So then you want to see a higher rental rate because of how interest rates increasing and returns increasing in other areas. So, yeah, there's lots of different factors at play here. And some of this is just even maybe more cultural, the way farms are structured in different parts of Canada. Some areas we're used to, or maybe we have more younger farmers and we're more used to renting and expanding your land base, putting less capital into land and more into equipment and operation side of things. In other areas, maybe it's older money, more in land and less so more land is owned. I'm curious how rental rates themselves differ from province to province in terms of the percentage of land that is rented versus owned. Yeah,
and try putting together, say, like a 5-year land rental deal right now, and the landowners like, well, look at the markets, and the farmers like, yeah, look at the markets and the direction, in the opportunity to go lower, right? And I was, I don't know. I was listening to commodity analysts that could go higher. Like, it'd be an interesting debate right now trying to structure that and sort that out if you don't have sort of annual reviews inside that 5-year agreement. Obviously, there's a lot of ways to structure that land rental agreement. And some people probably have some great success stories with that. And I'm sure there's a few what we'll call horror stories out there in the audience as well. Hey, gang, that's all the time we have. That went very, very quickly. Really appreciate you guys joining us here today, Kelvin and Lyndsey. But hey, you know what? We got to sneak one more thing in. Stanley Cup predictions. Kelvin, who are you going with?
I have to go with my heart. The Toronto Maple Leafs. This is their year. This is it. Everything I said on the show may have lost its credibility now, but it's the
What happens? What happens if they don't?
What do you mean? What happens if?
When they?
Thank you.
The usual, the same old,
the same old.
I think we're all.
You shall tell tales of your sorrow.
Yeah,
and then everyone will jump right back on next year.
Just like every other year.
I just hope the Blue Jays are the first team this weekend to beat the Tampa Bay Rays. That's what I'm going for.
Yeah.
Go Toronto.
I'm not the only one making a pick here. Lyndsey, Shaun.
I know. I'm going to get to her. I was just making that. Yeah, we're going to get Lyndsey. Go ahead. Yeah, here's your opportunity.
Anyone but Toronto.
Oh, you're betting the field.
Yeah, anyone but Toronto. Yeah, I'm just betting against the Leafs. It's a little bit of a sore spot, all right? Ottawa played their last game last night. They're not even in the playoffs. So anyone but the Leafs. As long as the Leafs lose, I'm happy.
Okay. Vegas. I'm going to go with Vegas.
Oh,
that means Winnipeg's out in the first round then.
Sorry, Winnipeg. Winnipeg has been sending out some very stiff emails, I've heard, to season ticket holders or former ones saying, like, we need to support this club. We don't want to have happen again what happened. I was hearing about that from a few season ticket holders.
Yeah, it's the drama is back and certainly reliving in some ways the memories of the mid 1990s when they left.
Yeah, here we go. Well, it'll happen in Calgary too. Look at the rink was built like I think late 80s or late 70s, so or early 80s. Anyway, we're out of time now for sure. Lyndsey, have yourself a great weekend.
You as well.
And you too, Kelvin.
Thank you, Shaun. Are you cheering for the Oilers then?
Definitely not. Anyone but the Oilers. Yep. You heard me, John Gilly. Anybody but the Oilers. Stuart Person, anybody but the Oilers. I could keep on going through RealAg Radio fans and anybody but the Oilers. Okay. Thanks for hanging in with us, everybody. Hope you enjoyed today's show of RealAg Radio. We're trying to do this where we do a bonus segment. It's kind of fun. Like, you know what? Rural Radio only gives us so much time. You know what? Whatever. We're going to keep on rolling here. When we finished there, Lyndsey was asking Kelvin more questions about him and his Leafs. Well, Lyndsey, what were you asking him?
Well, like what, as Leafs fans, the eternal, this will be our year. What on earth would happen if it got close to that? Like, what would happen if they don't choke? What would be the identity of a Leafs fan at that point?
We might lose some of that identity, or we'd be in crisis, I think, in terms that we might be confused. We'd have to ask like Boston Red Sox fans
or Cubs.
After they won the World Series, or Cubs fans after the, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You go, they went even much longer, 100 years or whatever it was before winning. The Leafs are only at, what are we, 60 years almost? So
only,
yeah. It's, but they do hold. They're tied now for, I believe, the longest streak of playoff appearances. So we have kind of gone through this already, Lyndsey, where they're actually making I remember this feeling when they started making the playoffs. So like, what? We're not used to cheering for, watching hockey and cheering for our team in the playoffs a couple of years ago. Yeah. So it's up to 7 years in a row. We don't need to say how far they've gone in those playoffs, but
we're not going to mention that.
Yeah. We have other things to talk about here too. We can talk about. Well, we have lots more time to talk about the Leafs playoff run. We've got it.
Oh, do we? I thought we had like 10 days. I thought.
Exactly. Let's mark it down now. Yeah, get it all in early. Poor Kelvin.
You know, in the fall, these bonus segments are just going to turn into me trying to get you guys interested in college football. So anyway, one of the things we didn't get to, and a little bit of there's two serious things. One is, have you seen the footage from this barn fire? This explosion on this dairy farm in Texas?
Yeah, what was it from?
Well, so I saw on RFD TV this morning, they think now, what was reported was manure equipment is thought to be the cause of the catastrophic Texas barn fire earlier this week. So I don't know what happened, like some, the manure heated, and I don't know what happened, but like an estimated 18,000 head of cattle were killed. One person died, and it's the deadliest barn fire recorded since the Animal Welfare Institute began tracking fires like this. The footage I saw on Twitter is just like what? It honestly looks like someone dropped a bomb on the dairy farm. Like, it is crazy. Sorry, Kelvin, go ahead.
And how I can understand, or maybe there's an explanation that somebody can share. Why wasn't there a way to save some of the animals, or how, like, open some gates and let them out? I'm not sure. Was it all tie stall model? I'm not sure, but
I can't imagine it would be. But yeah, but I don't know. Although it brings up a very good question of, when you have livestock, do you think about in an emergency what you would do, right? And some livestock, and certainly when we saw that in the Fraser Valley when there was flooding, there was people trying to swim cows out and those sorts of things. But how often do we think about what would we do in, a fire or an emergency? There isn't always really a good plan in place for these things. So, goodness, maybe there should be. Yeah, exactly. And I'm guessing that there are some farms, certainly. I mean, if I think about just the wild weather that we just saw just a couple of weeks ago down south, where the hog barn lost the entire roof, and amazingly the piglets were all fine. But so if you're more prone to those sorts of weather events, do you have more plans like that? So I'm not sure if they're or not. Hey, are you taking suggestions on what to talk about in this extra segment?
Sure, go ahead. Yeah.
Well, okay, so I have been waiting to ask Kelvin about feedback on the latest Ag Policy Connection about the wheat board. So I know that for, maybe our eastern, Ontario and points east aren't super in this discussion, but for anyone who lives Manitoba to Alberta, we lived and breathed this for how long? And so now that, there is this fulsome discussion out there, what has the feedback been on, did you get it right, or did you tick off both sides?
I think both sides. It's same old. It brought back a lot of it not only brought back memories talking about the wheat board days and the unfolding, the dismantling of the single desk, but also in terms of the feedback and the emotions that this issue brings. And I do think that even for listeners in Eastern Canada and other areas not in the prairies, it's certainly a very interesting and fascinating political case study what happened with the wheat board and just the politics of it. And so, yeah, I mentioned it on Wednesday's show. I was a bit surprised how dug in one of our guests, David Hurley, who was the pollster that ran the Wheat Board's annual producer surveys, he was in terms of the support that there was for the Wheat Board back in the early 2000s or late 2000s and going into 2012 when the Conservatives ended it. So I do think that I'm surprised that that people still feel so strongly about how many farmers there were for or against the wheat board at that time. And a lot of it comes down to your definition of a farmer is somebody who has a quarter section and still is a permit book holder, but isn't actively farming, is retired, and how that gets weighted. And that's something that I thought maybe had faded away. And I was surprised that, and that's something that a lot of people commented that they found, especially people that were like, well, in our Real Agri Studies research last summer, on the 10-year anniversary showed that most farmers have moved on and most are okay with it, the majority. And so that is kind of opposite to what we heard from the pollster on our panel. And so that's maybe been the most common piece of feedback I've got, where people are like, do we still actually believe that those wheat board producer surveys, that support was that strong for the wheat board, that kind of thing?
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, there's certainly still a group of individuals that feels very strongly, but I don't think it's that big of a group of individuals.
No, in our survey data showed that it's like I think there are super passionate people on both ends of this that the issue will never go away. Yeah. Like yesterday on the farm rapid fire. Okay, I did it on purpose. We happened to have Jim. It was total coincidence. We had Jim Wickett, who's been heavily involved in the Western wheat growers for a long time. And Jim's viewpoint on the single desk is well known. He's very clear about it. He does not mince words. And I teed him up like a great or sort of 8-year-old T-ball league, and asked him, what he thought about that decision in relation to the policy podcast that Kelvin's been hosting. And Jim went off like it was 12 years ago. Right? Like, yeah. And it'd be the same if you talk to somebody, his name escapes me, sorry, from the NFU.
Stuart Wells.
Yeah.
He would do the same on the other side. You bought a time machine and you went back. And it was the same debate. It was the same people. And there was a lot of people believed in their perspective on it. Like
we talked about my Leafs fandom personality identity. I would say some of these characters, personalities involved on the wheat board file, like Shaun said, it was even deeper than that in more ingrained in their personality, which side of the wheat board debate they were on.
And I mean, for good reason, like, I guess similar to the Leafs, this was an institution that was in place for a very long time and, did a lot of business and was, our face overseas for Canadian wheat and these sorts of things. So it's understandable. Like it or not, it was a huge fabric of, prairie agriculture. So, I mean, it makes sense that especially for those who were really at the forefront of whether it stayed or went, it would still be pretty raw, really.
Just imagine if there was the political will to say, hey, dairy supply management, here's the government's decision. We're getting rid of it. Just imagine that discussion. And a lot of times it gets compared, and in some ways it's very different. In some ways, it kind of is sort of the same, but it would be sort of different personalities and different people, but similar kind of discussion. Like what made the board one so unique is the fact that, the more I talk to Tyler and the more I talk to Kelvin, and you sort of think back, how much of it was about the timing of Jerry Ritz being the minister and making that decision. And Tyler alluded to this on Wednesday's show, Kelvin, about how he was just, a decision was made and he got support from the prime minister and we forge ahead. He had support of cabinet. He didn't have to walk it back, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he didn't follow the typical cabinet approval process. Get your ideas in here and we'll rank them kind of thing. He basically just went and did media interviews saying, we're going to end the wheat board single disc right after that federal election in 2011. And it may have been unconventional in terms of political procedure, but also that's in line with Jerry Ritz's personality and the way he served as ag minister as well.
Yeah. Okay, well, we could go on for a long time here, but I actually have to go. Yes.
The man who wants the extra segment is like, so I want more, but then I have to go.
Well, the next person I have to record with is Bob saying, why haven't you called me yet?
You're like, oh, right. There's more to do. Okay. Well, this was fun. Thanks, everyone. I hope some people listen to it. Let us know if you do. I'm curious.
Well, yeah, the podcast people, they want more. They're like, you know what, why not? We're not structured here by time.
Well, and we are heading into windshield season, so everybody's got time.
Exactly. Hey, also I forgot to mention it during the show, but if you haven't yet, check out RealAg on the weekend.
Oh, yeah.
I've been putting that together. That's been a lot of fun. So it's on Ralco in Saskatoon and in Regina. So for you in Saskatchewan, it's the same stations as Gormley, to make it simple for you. I know you listen to that. It's 4:00 Saskatchewan time on those stations. It's kind of a wrap up on the week, and sometimes it's brand new stuff. Sometimes it's kind of a summary of what we heard this on RealAg Radio. But and we also podcast it too. So everybody check that out. It's kind of a fun new project that we're doing. We're not adverse to new. Oh, I don't know if I should tell everybody yet. We have a new video. Well, we did launch. I have another one I was going to talk about, but we should talk about the one that actually went up.
Mm-hmm.
Profitable practices.
Super excited about this one.
We are excited because we're looking at profitability first, but including sustainability. So this is kind of a very unique thing. So we got two good sponsors, great sponsors, I should say, Farm Credit Canada and RBC. And the idea is, a lot of times farmers are being told, preached at, told what to do. Like you shall do this. If you want to be sustainable, you need to do this. Why are you not doing that? This is more like, here's what farmers are doing today, and they're making money at it. And so it's kind of a different perspective, Lyndsey.
It absolutely, it's what was there already, but exactly that. We're sort of turning it on its head to say, you can make profit a priority on your farm, and you can do good things for the environment and the people within that farm and in your community. It can all work together because people already are. And let's look at the business and the practices that these farms are using to make all that happen. And put the three things together and take it from a business perspective, not just from a feel good. And super exciting. So we've got a couple already ready to roll. So those will be rolling out over the next couple months, and right on through to the end of the year. We'll have new videos every couple weeks. So pretty exciting.
And we got a new series coming in July. I'm going to save that one, but it's pretty bloody cool.
It's an exciting one.
It is really cool. You're going to like this one, I promise you. Okay, everybody, have yourself a great weekend. Kelvin, Lyndsey, all the best to you.
Thank you. Take care,
Bye
everyone.
now.
Thank you for downloading this episode of RealAg Radio, brought to you by high-performing new carbine insecticide from FMC. New carbine insecticide hits aphids hard with effective, selective, and extended control. It also has activity on ligus and tarnished plant bugs. Ask your retailer today.